We're starting off our fall activities with a classic Montessori activity that we tend to shy away from for toddlers, which is flower arranging. And we're using fall flowers here, which are the mums that are in yellow, orange, and red. This activity not only works on their pouring skills, it works their pincer grasp, it also helps them with posting, and also problem solving. You can see Stella figures out that one flower is not going to let her get the other flowers in, so she has to take it out to get the other flowers to fit inside. Not only that, she gets to enjoy the final product, which is a beautiful vase of flowers right on her little weaning table, which helps her have an appreciation for beauty and to take care of her own environment. You can adjust this activity for the little ones to do hand over hand to help them with the pouring and also guiding the flowers into the vase. Conversely, for the older children, you can give them a pair of scissors and have them cut the flowers to be the right size to fit into the vase. And in the end, we always remind them to use their eyes and their nose to look at the flowers once we're done arranging them, and also clean up any spills we may have made in the process. Moving on to a matching activity. If your little one hasn't started with matching yet, it's best to begin with actual items that are the exact same. So we've got 2 apples, 2 oranges, and 2 pears that are almost the exact same here. It's a lot easier for them to comprehend 2 identical items versus an item and a picture. Even if it's the exact same picture of the exact item they're matching, that's still a very abstract concept. So I chose to go with some fruits that we will be using a lot as the fall time rolls around. You can also obviously use something like pumpkins. You can use any other kind of decorations or things that are in your culture for the fall time, as long as they're pretty much identical items. And I would start with 3, maybe 4 items. Obviously not 2, because then you don't know if the child has actually grasped the concept or if they're just accidentally making the right matches. So obviously, as we're working on this, we use this also as a language opportunity, so calling out the items. Here I was naming specific fruits for Stella to take out and asking her to take out the second one to match. Eventually, we actually laid out each one of the fruits and I asked her to find the identical one and put them in the right spot, and she almost got it. Once your little one has mastered this version of matching, you can take pictures of these fruits and make sure they're the exact same size on the paper once printed out and have them match the fruits to the pictures. And a quick interlude as a reminder that going outside is always going to be the best way to experience fall. So if you've got any kind of farm or corn maze around you, take advantage of that. Stella actually really loved the corn maze at our local pumpkin patch, and since she loves corn, that was our next activity. The cooler seasons always bring along a lot of wonderful practical life opportunities in the kitchen as we start to cook and bake a lot more. But if your little one is not yet at the point where they can help you slice and dice and make an entire apple or pumpkin pie, don't avail. There's definitely other practical life activities we can do. As you can see here, Stella loves shucking corn. She loves separating it out. And this is a wonderful way to start even sorting. We're sorting out the husks of the corn from the actual corn itself. If you've progressed to color matching with your little one, you can certainly use a green bowl for the green husks and then the yellow bowl for the yellow corn. You can see she's having to use her little big muscles quite a lot to get the husk to get off of this corn, but this is a wonderful way for them to work all of their muscles, their pincer grasp, their fine motor skills, their gross motor skills. This is a lot of steps for them to remember, and she's only done this activity one other time, but she already remembered a lot of what needed to be done. This is a lot of sequencing, this is a lot of problem solving, this is a lot of preparation for later mathematical and scientific activities. If you've got a picky eater, this is also a great way to get them to try new foods, because the one time that Stella did make this corn and she got to try it, it became her favorite food. And after that, every time she sees it in a picture book, she goes nyam 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 because it's her favorite food now. With this one activity, we're not only working fine and gross motor skills, we're also working pouring. And no, that's not hot water. I just poured the cold water into a kettle to make it easier for us to pour it into the pot. We're also working on shape matching. This is essentially a giant puzzle trying to get this big pot lid to fit on the pot. And this is exactly what we mean when we say you can do Montessori at home without having to buy any kind of activities. Just do simple tasks around the house and include your little one. And of course, at the very end, it wouldn't be a Montessori toddler if we didn't get a little rag to clean up all of our spills. Probably the favorite part of any practical life activity. I had noticed the previous time and this time when we worked with the corn that Stella specifically enjoyed working with actual husks and the peels of the corn, so I decided to make a little sensory bin for her with those. I don't do sensory bins a lot with her because she doesn't seem to enjoy them, but this kind of specific sensory bin where it's just the one kind of item plus something very specific for her to do, she does enjoy. So I hid all of her little insects in there. She's been really interested in learning all the insect names lately. She had a very specific task. I was calling out insects and she was looking for them in the corn and then placing them in a basket. Something where it's just a lot of different items that is just sensory exploration is not something that she's personally into. So if you've been making intricate sensory bins for your little one and they have not been into them, try this kind of approach. A very simple one type of sensory exploration with a very intentional task that the child has to do so that they still see a beginning, a middle, and an end to the task. And of course, after all that hard work, she did need to do a taste test of the corn when it was done. Moving on to the art activity of the video, yes, we're going to move into painting. You know, there's this misconception online that there is no art in Montessori, which can't be further from the truth. Dr. Montessori had said, "I don't know if we produce good artists, but we do produce a child with an eye that sees, a soul that feels, and a hand that obeys." And as someone with an art background myself, I'd say that's a pretty good artist. I choose to start with Q-tips because that controls how much paint is picked up as opposed to a brush, which can actually hold a lot of paint and that can go flying everywhere. However, you can see that I actually tried to make a little tree so that we had a guide of where to put the little dots. And Stella went the absolute Montessori way and reminded me once again that the best way to approach art is actually just to provide a blank canvas and allow the child to explore the medium. You can see she's not doing the dots, she's mixing the colors and she's putting them wherever she likes. And that's honestly the best way to approach it. I would completely forego trying to make any kind of sense of the picture and just let the child explore. And if you've got an older child, it's best not to ask what is this, but rather invite them to explain the art to you because it may just be an abstract mix of their emotions and movement. Next is what I was going to make my attempt at bobbing for apples, the toddler version, but also using pumpkins. So essentially I placed a bunch of pumpkins in some water and I gave Stella this giant scoop to move the pumpkins from the bowl with the water into an empty bowl. If pumpkins aren't really a sign of fall where you live, definitely use whatever item is going to be more appropriate for you. And while my initial intent here was for Stella to practice picking up something quite heavy with that ladle and move it from the bowl to the empty bowl, instead she ended up putting all of the pumpkins into the empty bowl and using the ladle to scoop the water from one bowl into the other. And it took her a couple of tries of seeing me do this before she actually was interested in the activity. So much so that I was actually just about to pack it up and then suddenly she was so entranced by moving the water from the bowl to the other bowl. So if you introduce a new activity to your child and they don't seem interested, don't hurry to put it away just yet. Step back and see if maybe they just needed some space to explore it safely before they really got into it. And while we're already working gross motor skills, transferring, pouring, crossing the midline, we can make this even more difficult for the older kids. We can set up different containers based on the colors of the pumpkins, based on the shapes of the pumpkins. You see I've got some that are squished and some that are fully round. We can also separate them out by size. So if we've got mini pumpkins, medium pumpkins, and large pumpkins, and then we can work on either matching or size differentiation. And it wouldn't be a Montessori video if there wasn't some kind of vegetable or fruit washing and scrubbing involved. So again, with the pumpkins, we're gonna go ahead and wash them off because they came from the pumpkin patch and they're quite dirty. Now I did offer Stella to use that little scrubber that we've got, which is great for working that grasp, and there's a lot of motion control that she has to do, but she's really not interested in the scrubby brush itself. She was more interested in just using her hands to wash the pumpkin and then dry it off with a towel, which is all wonderful ways for her still to practice those motor skills and practical life skills. Next, we're going on a nature walk, but don't forget to bring your basket. First, we're going to focus on everything that's making this season different from summer. So we're going to listen to the crinkly leaves. We're going to look at all the different insects that we're seeing. We're going to feel the breeze of the wind. Your child may notice that there's a lot more shadows now, that they can see the moon earlier than they could see it before. Let them go at their pace for now. Let them explore everything they're seeing around. This is the best sensory exploration and the best sensory bin we can provide for our kids. And while our fall is surprisingly very warm still, even if you live in a colder climate and you've got rainy days, dress your child appropriately and allow them to explore and really feel what fall is like in your environment. And while you're on your nature walk, encourage your child to pick up items that they're interested in and put them in the basket. This took a bit of explaining and modeling for Stella to pick up at first, but then she was very interested in picking up the items that she found more interesting, which was mainly pond cones here. She also found some sticks, some rocks, so things that are going to be about the nature that they see at this time, because we're going to do a couple of activities with this next. We're starting out with a one-to-one correspondence activity, which is essentially the baseline for a lot of the mathematic concepts. And you see I started out with just an old egg crate. You can certainly use some little plates if you have those. And I was putting one leaf in one spot thinking that that was enough control of error. But you can see that Stella quickly started shoving as many leaves as possible into the slots, which means that that is not enough control of error for her age yet. So we switched over to pine cones, and now because they're so large to take up the entire slot, that is the perfect control of error. She physically cannot get another pine cone into the singular spot, meaning that she has discovered the one-to-one correspondence naturally. And so when we're DIYing these materials at home, it's important to remember that there still needs to be an appropriate control of error for our child at their current development. I save the best for last. This has actually been the favorite activity in our household. We're going to be doing a 2-period lesson with the items that we found on our nature walk. We're first going to lay them all out and name them for the child. When we think the child is ready, we're going to work on recognition. So asking the child to give us the items, like hand me that rock please, or playing with the items. So I actually started doing almost a matching activity. I took out this book that we had about autumn and I started showing all the different items that we have on the tray that are also in the book. And while Stella has previously been very indifferent to matching items to pictures, this is the first time she's actually been interested in at least trying this out. So sometimes it really just takes finding the right kind of items for a child to be interested in a kind of activity that we're presenting. So I hope you enjoyed some of these activity ideas, and until next time, I hope you stay safe.